Welcome to This Explainer. So, did you know that the modern weekend was practically non-existent a century ago? Today, we're going to trace the fascinating 150-year evolution of trade unions. We'll be journeying all the way from the intense, smoke-filled factories of the Industrial Revolution right up to the app-driven gig economy we have today. Because whether you punch a clock, log into a remote server, or take freelance gigs, the story of organized labor is fundamentally the story of your working life.
Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the origins of trade unions. Number 2, winning the 40-hour workweek. Number 3, the power of collective bargaining. Number 4, the modern union decline. And finally, number 5, the future of labor. Let's dive right in. Section 1, the origins of trade unions and the Industrial Revolution's impact. Imagine the really jarring shift for British workers between 1760 and 1840. Before this, you were likely paid for piecework, sewing or crafting at your own kitchen table, totally at your own rhythm. But then boom, steam power hits. Almost overnight, workers were thrust into deafening, mechanized factories, facing utterly exhausting 12-hour shifts. Mill owners were totally obsessed with efficiency, so workers were no longer ruled by the project, but by the relentless, dangerous pace of the clock. It was this extreme pressure, combined with incredibly unhealthy conditions, that sparked the urgent need for collective protection.
Moving on to Section 2, winning the 40-hour workweek, the decades-long struggle for time. It's so easy to take standard working hours for granted today, isn't it? But looking at this timeline, achieving them absolutely wasn't an overnight success. Just follow this progression. In 1866, the country's first union federation actually started pushing Congress for an 8-hour day. Fast forward to 1886, and nearly 1 million workers strike on May Day. That was a highly turbulent period that included the tragic Haymarket Affair, where peaceful rallies suddenly turned deadly. And it wasn't until 1938 that FDR signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which was finally amended in 1940 to establish the 40-hour federal limit. That basic standard was bought with over 70 years of relentless effort.
Section 3, the power of collective bargaining. Let's look at economic models and tangible benefits.
Now, you might think strong unions automatically mean constant disruptive strikes, right? Well, the concept of corporatism shows a completely different reality. It's essentially a social pact. Unions accept the capitalist system, and in exchange, they get full employment policies and income protection. Because unions actually sit at the national decision-making table, they tend to moderate their politics to represent the whole workforce. Famously, in Austria, which is a model corporatist state, this kind of consensus meant the average strike length per employee per year was literally measured in mere seconds.
Then we have the gent system. This explains why Nordic countries like Denmark, Finland, and Sweden historically boast some of the highest union density rates in the world. And the arrangement is brilliant in its simplicity. Unemployment benefits are heavily subsidized by the state, but they're administered directly by the trade unions themselves. This basically turns unemployment insurance into a massive, natural recruitment tool, cementing their institutional power and ensuring highly organized collective action.
But you're probably wondering, does all this organizing actually pay off for the individual worker? It's not just theory. Extensive academic research published in interdisciplinary journals consistently validates these frameworks. The data proves that collective bargaining has a profound material impact on your life.
Here's the bottom line. Data from the Economic Policy Institute reveals that unionized workers earn a massive 10 to 20% wage premium compared to their non-unionized peers working in the exact same industries. So that's a direct, highly quantifiable financial benefit. And hey, the benefits go well beyond just your base pay. When researchers compare unionized versus non-unionized workers across healthcare access, pension schemes, and paid leave, a very clear pattern emerges. In every single category, organized labor successfully secures significantly better access. This ensures long-term job security and a much, much higher quality of life. Which brings us to Section 4, the modern union decline, shifting power and new challenges. Unfortunately, according to OECD data, union density across developed countries has basically fallen off a cliff. Back in 1980, it sat comfortably around 30%. Today, it's plummeted to just 16%. That is a massive historic loss of global collective bargaining power. So what exactly drove this steep decline? For one, the sources point to deliberate policy shifts. In the UK, Margaret Thatcher's policies intentionally shifted power away from unions and toward employers to enable a wider retrenchment of the welfare state. We saw similar policy shifts even in highly unionized Nordic countries.
where right-wing governments work to detach unemployment insurance from the unions, essentially dismantling that Ghent system we talked about earlier to prepare the ground for cuts to welfare spending.
But beyond politics, organized labor has been deeply impacted by a vicious cycle of modern economic challenges. Globalization, automation, and restrictive labor policies have all taken a huge toll. But perhaps the most insidious challenge is the gig economy. Think about it. If you're on a short-term contract or driving for an app, you simply cannot risk a strike. You literally can't afford to dock your pay. This creates a really tough trap. Union weakness leads to precarious jobs, which in turn creates a workforce totally unable to unionize.
And finally, Section 5, the future of labor, adapting to the 21st century. With traditional models under immense strain, how do worker protections survive today? Well, researchers have outlined a concrete survival roadmap for labor organizations. Step 1, fortify legal protections so workers can organize without any fear of retaliation. Step 2 is absolutely vital. Unions have to expand to include the gig economy, advocating for minimum wage protections for those atypical workers. Step 3, promote international collaboration to counter massive multinational corporations. And finally, Step 4, leverage digital tools to actively organize and engage a younger, digitally native workforce.
We've seen how workers fought for decades just to win the 8-hour day, right? And how collective bargaining secured unprecedented benefits. But we've also seen exactly how fragile those gains can be against policy shifts and modern technology. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this vital question to think about. As automation and the gig economy completely redefine what it means to be an employee, how will your rights and protections be guaranteed in the future of work? Thank you so much for joining us, and keep asking the big questions.